Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Muhi Khwaja with the American Muslim Community Foundation Muslim Philanthropy Podcast, and today we have on Maha Ayesh from the Muslim Community of Knoxville. She is their president. Welcome to the show, Maha.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much. Nice to be here.
Likewise. So tell everybody a little bit more about yourself and where you're located.
Yeah, like you said, I am president of the Muslim Community of Knoxville. That is the main organization, sort of the umbrella organization for Muslims in the Knoxville, Tennessee area. We're a pretty small community, so we don't have a ton of masajid. We have one main masjid, which MCK, my organization, operates, and then we have some satellite musallas, and we try to work all together. So most of the Muslim organizations in this area try to work together pretty closely. Or, we're a lot of them were, for example, the Islamic school was called Anwar Academy of Knoxville, and it sprung from the Muslim community of Knoxville. Yeah, and so Knoxville, Tennessee is in East Tennessee, and I have actually lived in Knoxville my whole life. I was born here,
Wow.
and yeah, so it was interesting. I grew up in the masjid that I'm now the president of, um, and yeah, so sort of been here my whole life. Grew up in the mosque and the community here. Joined the shore board after sort of I finished school. Have been on and off and on for several years, and became the president a couple of years ago.
That's really exciting. So you've kind of seen full circle how the community benefits others, and really fascinating to kind of see someone from the community grow into the community and now leading the
Yeah.
community. Um, so I think this story is kind of almost similar for a lot of other mosques across the country, where kind of the second generation is now taking over, right? And tell us a little bit more about like growing up in the community and kind of what that experience for you was.
Yeah, it's interesting because we've seen our mosque grew from a 100% volunteer-led organization, zero staff for many, many years. And actually, the first time we hired staff was the first time I was on the shore board, which, I was still quite young. It was probably 2007, 2008 time period. And it was controversial at that time that we would even hire an administrative assistant to help us with organizing. I remember there being a lot of controversy on the board at the time. Like, what do you mean we're going to pay some unknown person to come and have access to our records and things like that? And this idea that the function of the shore board was to physically put in all the work and the hours to the organization.
Right.
And I think at some point we sort of realized that that's a limiting conception of how to run an organization, and you need people who are dedicated to it. And so we're still really small compared to other organizations. We hired an imam for the first time, really, this year, which is something I think we could talk about later as
Wow.
well. But we had, there were times growing up where I remember people, maybe we tried out an imam for a short period of time, but I remember in one case they just didn't have the funds to pay. In another case, it just maybe wasn't a good fit, and so we never had a long-term imam. And so we're hopefully doing that for the first time this year. And yeah, definitely grown this idea. And I think the idea of when immigrants are leading the masjid, I think the masjids in Muslim countries have a different function than masjids have here. That they're really much more community centers. Um, and so, kind of shifting that perspective a little bit. While at the same time, our other organizations are growing as well. And so we have a school that's external to the masjid. We have a seminary program that's external to the masjid. And so, sort of conceptualize like what is the function that the masjid plays as we're growing, and these other organizations are also sort of taking part and stuff. So it's been interesting. So I've been really involved in the masjid. Obviously, like I said, I grew up here, but then during my MSA days, our MSA was really closely affiliated with the masjid and did a lot of work at that time. And so it's been interesting to see the change over the years.
That's really neat. In terms of your professional background, so what did you go into and kind of what do you do as well?
Yeah, so I'm an attorney. I've practiced law in Knoxville for about 12 years. And recently, just a couple months ago, I started a position as a law professor at a law school in Knoxville called Lincoln Memorial University School of Law. And
Awesome.
so So that's sort of what I'm doing now.
Yeah, congrats on that.
Thanks.
So you mentioned a couple of external organizations to Muslim Community of Knoxville. And were these entities that kind of started up within MCK and then became additional services, or just closely affiliated? Are they separate 501c3s? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we have different models. So for the most part, they're all separate 501c3s, but a lot of times, so for example, my understanding of how the school, our full-time Islamic school is, daycare through eighth grade, and that started in the mosque itself. Some volunteer teachers, doing a preschool, running a preschool, and over time it grew, and it's a separate legal entity. Now we have another organization that didn't start physically within the mosque, but started by MCK members who wanted to um, just have a little bit more freedom than you can, I guess, have in a member run organization in terms of just getting some more kind of work done a little bit more
Mm-hmm.
quickly. And so that started as Taysir Foundation, and then they kind of transferred into a full-time seminary program that runs here in
Yeah,
Knoxville.
definitely.
We have a branch of Dar Qasim, which is a seminary in Chicago. We have a branch of that here that was started by local people here who were students of Dar Qasim who wanted to start a branch here, and so we have ties with them. But then there's other organizations, like for example, we just did a fundraiser the other day for a mosque in a town called Maryville, which is about 35-40 minutes away from Knoxville. It's a smaller town, and they are building a mosque, and so they start out as basically just a part of MCK, but then at a certain point they grow large enough and their own revenue is large enough that they really need to be their own entity, and so they're doing that. Now we have a sort of soup, not a soup kitchen, but like a homeless meal program that started just by
Mm-hmm.
members of our mosque, and they run under the name of Anur Kitchen, and they are growing, getting more and more donations now that we're talking to them about, becoming a separate
Nice.
501c3. And so it's sort of, we have a free medical clinic that runs on Saturdays, and that started off as part of MCK, but again, they sort of found there would be benefit to having their own organization. So there's a lot of things that start within MCK and then branch off into their own thing.
Yeah, almost like an incubator. Like you guys are
Yeah.
helping these organizations launch their services, and that's really neat.
Yeah.
One of the things that American Muslim Community Foundation provides is a similar service called fiscal sponsorship, right? So it's like we will host the finances of the organizations and allow them to focus on their mission. So, we produce their receipts for them. We set up a donation page for them. We give them a report of all the income that they've generated. And then they request reimbursement based on that. And they haven't necessarily applied for their 501c3 from the IRS yet, and maybe they're in between waiting to hear back. So it just gives, and it also allows them to apply for grants going forward from foundations that maybe require 3 years of finances before they can apply. So it's a kind of unique partnership that AMCF provides, and great to see MCK doing it for the local community there as well.
Yeah, and I think ours is much more, it's much less formal in that sense. It's more like, okay, they need an organization because people start donating large sums of money. They don't want to donate just
Right,
one person, obviously. And
right.
so we sort of provide that mechanism for them. But the idea that there's actually some system established for them to do that a little bit more intentionally is neat.
Yeah. So, what are some other, AMCF got to know about MCK through our COVID-19 response fund for nonprofits, and we were really grateful for MCK applying. Let the community kind of know, like, what were some of the initiatives that the grant went towards and were able to help MCK kind of sustain through the early months of COVID-19.
Yeah, so this was, a real blessing to have organizations like yours who are providing grants for organizations that saw a lot of income just stop during COVID-19. So, like I mentioned, that we had this initiative this year to hire a full-time imam for really the first time, a permanent full-time imam. And so that had been something that we had made the offer at the beginning of the year, and the plan was for him to start in the fall and sometime between July and September time period. And and it was a little bit, and we had a big fundraiser planned in March. And in our community, we have not had a large fundraiser for the Muslim community of Knoxville in a long time. It's been several years, like 5 years. These other organizations that are growing and establishing, they've had plenty of fundraisers. We've had fundraisers for specific problems, but not just sort of a general expenses fundraiser.
Right.
And we had a big one planned for March. It was going to be at a hall that we rented. We were bringing in, I guess, guests from out of town, and it was going to be a big event. And so that was planned for the third or fourth week of March. And so we had to cancel that. And so the idea that we had this
Wow.
big expense starting with an imam starting, our
Yeah.
big fundraiser that we were really banking on got canceled. Um, and we were eventually able to do an online fundraiser, but we were still getting used to the online fundraisers. We've learned a lot since then through some of our other sister organizations about how to do those better, but so it wasn't quite as successful as we had hoped it would be. The other thing is that we have had, like I mentioned, is it was sort of controversial a few years ago when we wanted to hire an administrator for the first time for the mosque, an administrative assistant, which is a part-time position actually. And we've had administrative assistants over the years since then, but we really realized that we needed more of technical support because all of our programming went online. And we were doing Jummah khutbahs online, not Jummah prayers, obviously, but
Sure.
the reminders of Jummah khutbahs online. We were trying to do a lot of activities online when COVID first hit because people suddenly were not going to the masjid. And so we tried to make up for that with a lot of online classes and programming. And we needed technical support for that. And so we needed to hire someone who could provide technical support. Um, and so that was a new expense. We also decided to hire a social worker, which was something we had been planning since the beginning of the year, was to hire someone who could
Mm-hmm.
help us facilitate our zakat distribution a little bit better, and also work directly with the people who are requesting zakat funds to see how, maybe there were other not like, other ways to assist them other than providing direct financial assistance. And so
Right.
we hired someone. So since COVID struck, and it really did, put a big dent in a lot of our income, and that people weren't coming. We get so much just from Jummah donations, and people are
Of
not coming to
course.
Jummah. And so, having, but at the same time, we're like, we've got to, there's people we need to hire to get some of this work done. And so, so having that money come in gave us some peace of mind that, like, we can hire these folks for the time being and know that we've got something going to them. And while we sort of regroup and figure out how are we going to readjust ourselves to deal with the new situation.
Yeah, really grateful to have an opportunity to help the community. And, I think it's fascinating to see all the different services that MCK is providing the community. And, we definitely talked a little bit about the challenge of COVID-19. So, like, going forward, obviously, like the weather there and challenges of maybe hosting prayer outside, like, what is the current status of like community prayers and stuff, and what's the hope based on like state regulations and everything like that?
Yeah, and so I don't know if you've heard or kept up, but in addition to California, Tennessee is actually the worst state now in the country for the COVID surge. And so we actually remained closed until it was after the first Eid for sure. I'm trying to remember if it was after the second Eid. It might have even been after the second Eid al-Adha, that we remained closed. We opened back up and have been slowly adding. We've been adding prayer time. So we used to basically do 3 prayers throughout all the locations in the Knoxville area that host salahs, and we've increased it to 5 prayers so that we can have smaller numbers. And so
And
we've
this is
been
just for Jummah or for every
just
day?
for Jummah,
Got it.
yes, just for Jummah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so so things have been getting a little bit worse, and we're getting worried, and we actually just decided yesterday that we're going to have to cancel Jummah again, just because the situation is getting so bad here that, as community leaders, it's sort of, we have an obligation to keep people's safety in mind. So,
Yeah.
and the safety of our greater Knoxville and Tennessee communities. And so we can't be hosting these large gatherings. Although people have been really great about masking up and having their own prayer rugs and remaining distanced. Like you said, the weather is not. I mean, it's been in the 30s and 40s the past few days. It's not really conducive to outdoor prayer. And so yeah, so we're going to probably be canceling prayers again for a little bit.
Yeah, it's a big challenge, and definitely being on like the leadership committee of making that decision. I'm sure there's some opinions that maybe split, but it's a tough
Yep.
call to make, and I think that it's the right one. And there's a big amana there, and some mosques here in California, same situation. Like, it's not terribly cold, but for Californians, this is their winter, so it's cold for them.
Hmm.
Having lived in Michigan, I can brave through the weather, but a lot of them are, if they're still hosting the prayers, it's keeping it to a minimum of people, like 25 or under. Some are a
Hmm.
little bit larger than that based on the state regulations, but it's keeping the service short. It's being in and out, and inshallah khair, we'll be able to keep
Yep.
the community safe.
Yeah, there's
Um,
definitely there have been lots of mixed opinions even since the very beginning. And I mean, it's such a heavy thing because nobody wants to shut the masjid down.
right.
Not anything anybody wants to do, but you also don't want to feel like you're responsible for people getting sick. And so it's been, I think March and April were really, really stressful times for me, in large part because of my position on the shore board and
Yeah.
in the masjid. And I began to sympathize with just leaders in any capacity, even the government leaders that I don't agree with ever. Like, it's not easy to make decisions like this for people, and people are get upset. We've had our little share of kind of just people getting upset. We called a town hall meeting at one point in the spring just so people can vent their feelings to us. We did it online and let them go back and forth. The pro shutting down and the anti shutting down people go back and forth about what they want to say, and so that at least everybody could hear each other's perspectives. So
Yeah.
it's going to be difficult. I think people are not going to be too. There's going to be some people not very enthused about us shutting down again, but there's a lot of people who are not happy that we haven't shut down already. So
Yeah. I want to take this moment to maybe talk about just like in general mosque challenges.
Mhm.
Having seen it from the inside of running an organization, do you want to maybe share what some of those challenges external to COVID even are as well?
yeah, I mean, I will say, as regards to COVID goes, we had these the masajid, at least here, we've already sort of been dealing with fewer people coming to events and just the masjid not being as active and vibrant as we had hoped it would be. And so we had a great, part of bringing in imam, we had this great idea that we were going to make the masjid like much more vibrant and active. And people here like to talk about the masjid needing a lot of renovations and expansion, and we're like, well, people aren't coming, so let's have
Right.
people come, and then we'll talk about expansion and renovation. But so I had these big plans, and then it's difficult dealing with now. Suddenly, we're telling people don't come, and in my recovering from that is going to be difficult. Like, I even know for myself personally, I've got 3 kids, and we used to go to Jummah every week, and my kids now have not been to the masjid since March. And any desire that I had to inculcate in my children a love for the masjid sort of has been shut down
That's
a little bit.
tough.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so figuring out how to recover from that, and then how to keep people engaged while we're not going to the masjid. And the online stuff started off really popular, but over time it's waned in popularity. People are not really signing. I know myself, I'm not signing on to things online like I was in March or April.
Right.
So that's difficult as well. And so, I think again, these are some things that started like masjid attendance that started beforehand, right? I mean, that's something that we've been dealing with. Having our Jummahs full, but is anybody coming for the other prayers? And even Fajr and Isha, which historically have gotten the most attendance, those have not been very well attended in recent years. And trying to establish that connection. The other thing that we have is just kind of our membership role. We've struggled
Mm-hmm.
with um, like our database of members, like figuring out who is a member of the mosque and what does it mean to be a member of the mosque? Does it just mean that you vote for shore board candidates? Is there anything else that it means to be a member
Right.
of the mosque? Why do you want to be a member of the mosque? How do we know who's in our community unless we have some database of folks who are here? And so we have a lot of people who will come to the masjid for prayers, for example, because they know there's a masjid there, and they'll come to the masjid for prayer, but they aren't on any of our announcements lists. They're not members in any sense. They don't even, get on our email or WhatsApp announcements list to see what's going on. And so if we're trying to tell them you must bring your own mask and prayer rug to Jum'ah, they don't know. They're just showing up at the
Right.
masjid. And so
Right.
figuring out how to reach people is also sort of a struggle.
Thanks for providing that insight. And, I think that overall, like, sense of spirituality and connection and rebuilding that for the mosque is going to be one of the biggest challenges going forward. So, you know,
Yeah.
I think there's a big opportunity for creativity, for innovation, for the ability to reframe how Muslims engage in their spirituality. And of course, the mosque is always going to be a central part of that. But I think the methods in which the mosques now choose to employ will be really relevant to see how successful their congregations will continue to grow.
Yeah, and I think even I mentioned that we had a fundraiser was not as successful as I had hoped it would be, and that was in part, I think, because we were trying to do a traditional in-person type of fundraiser online, whereas what
Sure.
we've seen other folks do is just is sort of scrap that a little bit and just do something new. Like, for example, we had an entertainment guest speaker lined up and then a fundraising speaker lined up, and we were trying to translate that into online. But what we've seen recently, we raised $110,000 this weekend, just in like 30 minutes for this new masjid that they're building in Maryville,
Mm-hmm.
close by. And it's really just, people just want to get online. They see that, they'll watch for 5 minutes, the imam tell them how much we need money, then they'll donate. They don't need to sit through an hour and a half program
Yeah.
online. Nobody wants to do that anymore. So just sort of figuring out how we need to adjust to that, adjusting to our aids, trying to make aid something special
Sure.
without people actually being in person. That was sort of a bit of a challenge, and trying to get
Yeah.
creative with that. So yes, we definitely have our creative juices are trying to flow here.
Nice. Uh, you mentioned a little bit about Muslim Community of Knoxville providing zakat to community members. So aside from like direct financial assistance, are there other ways in which MCK provides community support as well for zakat?
Yes. Yeah, so our zakat program is limited to direct financial assistance to people who fit within the categories of zakat, and primarily fuqara. Like, we provide financial assistance to people who are in need. Um, and because our zakat program is not as robust as I would like it, and as other leaders in our community would like it, because a lot of people still send their zakat money overseas, or to other communities. Um, and so, that's something that we have a goal of in the next year, is really making a push for trying to keep some more of our zakat local, because we have a lot of need, and a lot of the people who are in need are people who are repeatedly in need. They come back every so often. Like I said, we have someone now who works with folks to try to see, what sort of structural changes we can help them make, or other support that we can give to them. But for a lot of people, they just will always be in a position of being in need. And so being able to recognize that, and being able to get enough, have our zakat program to be healthy enough so that we can give larger amounts to people, so that it can help them. For example, providing them with
Right.
money so they can get some training, go to school
Mm-hmm.
for some training, rather than just, okay, here's $500 for you to pay your most recent bill. So what I would like to see is something more robust, where we're actually providing people with support that can have more long-term effects. But we do, other than zakat, we do some specific programs. So we actually applied for grant money from a local organization for providing financial assistance, and not financial assistance, but it's providing assistance to people in need because of COVID. And so we started a food program shortly before Ramadan. It ran throughout Ramadan, where we were providing meals 3 days a week
Mm-hmm.
and groceries 1 day a week for people.
Nice.
And we were buying the meals from Muslim-owned restaurants in the local area. We did that for 6 months, or not 6 months, but about 6 to 8 weeks. We did that, and then we sort of regrouped to see how else, make sure we're serving people in need. And we're restarting something similar, where we have a sister in the community who has started providing groceries for folks in need. So that's a program that we have that's separately funded. We have a group that's really committed to serving the homeless, and so they've been really consistent with that. And recently providing, like, doing a coat drive and things like that for people who are on the streets to at least have some warm clothes to wear. Um, so we've been, and we do just specific projects as well as they come up. So um, we, oftentimes people in our community will ask us to participate in some sort of relief program. And so we'll occasionally host fundraisers for specific relief programs. And MCK often tries to donate as well. And MCK, we try to actually donate when we can to our local organizations who are in need. So, for
That's
example,
great.
the Islamic school built a gym in recent years, and the gym is sort of, we use it as a, when we could have community events, it could be used as a community hall, and it actually
Right.
hosts Jum'ah, which has been really nice in COVID to have that gym hosting Jum'ah because it holds so many more people than the masjid
Nice.
can hold, still spaced. And so the MCK gave financial support. We were one of the donors to that. So we try to work it. We try to support folks as we can within the community. And we've given loans to organizations starting musallas and masjids in the area to at least get them able to pay some of their, immediate expenses so they can go ahead and get started, and then they'll pay us back when they can.
That's really great to see. Um, Now, in terms of, is there anything else about MCK that you'd like to share?
I mean, MCK is an interesting community. I will say, people who have lived in Knoxville and then moved away really miss a lot of aspects about our community, and that is very close knit. It's large enough to feel like there is a community, but not so large that it's easy to not know a lot of people that live in the community. And so, for example, we don't have our, masjids. We don't have masjids that are divided by, this is the Desi masjid, this is the Arab masjid. That doesn't really exist in Knoxville, so that's really nice. And it's a nice, Knoxville is an interesting town, and I feel this way even practicing law in Knoxville. It's sort of like that. It sort of chose the line between, like, are we a big city or are we a small town? Like, we're not,
Right.
we're somewhere in between. So I sort of
Yeah.
like that.
Nice. So for you personally, what are some of your favorite sadaqah or zakat projects that you have been able to support?
Yeah, I personally, like, my annual zakat, I like to give directly to people in need. I like to know that the zakat I'm giving or is going to someone or family who is in need, for their, basic basic needs. So that's how my family, we prefer to spend our zakah specifically. Other than that, I mean, whenever we have a local, I do keep a lot of my giving within the local community. When we have fundraiser for the school or for the masjid that is, starting in Maryville, and things like that, you just feel like, the one thing about those fundraisers is that you really feel like it's, I told someone the other day, it's FOMO. It's like fear of missing out. Like, I better donate too, or else I'm missing out on the barakah and
Right.
the reward for it. And so and feeling like, again, this is a community that where I was raised, and in large part I am who I am today, obviously because of my parents, but also because of the friends that I made here and the
Mm-hmm.
community in which I was raised. So I do feel that I like to give locally as well. I also Celebrate Mercy is an organization that was started by Brother Tariq Masidi, who is from
Yep.
Knoxville, and so we try to support their programs as well. So they provide great programming, and especially they've done a couple of children's programs here in our community at the Islamic school. So I especially like that because I'm mother of children. So I like there being sort of things for kids. And so um, yeah, that's sort of, and then every now and then I'll just go, to be honest, I'll just go to Launch Good and say, what looks good on Launch Good today, because I need to give sadaqah for some reason or another. So
Right.
so I often do that.
Nice. Well, Maha, it has been such a pleasure learning about yourself and the Muslim community of Knoxville. I really appreciate your time. Is there anything else that we didn't cover today that you wanted to share?
I'll probably think of something later, but for now, no. But we should tell people that you and I have a little connection,
Yeah,
in
of
that
course.
Yeah, that you know my brother in Michigan, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember them speaking of you on occasion. So yeah, so it's
Yeah.
nice to connect with you this way. And when I see your name, I'm like, oh, I know that name.
Yeah,
So it's
definitely.
nice to see what you're doing now.
A lot of good memories watching Lost on their couch.
That was before
And
the last season when everybody realized
yeah,
it was a bad show.
yeah, and then also just seeing their kids grow, your nephews and nieces. It's been really good. So definitely a family friend of Hanny and Amira, and miss them being out in California now the last 7 years. But really great seeing them, and just knowing Hanny, I can assume so many great things about you and your family and the community that kind of helped raise you guys. So
Oh,
it's
thank you.
really great to see it 360 as well.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. This has been great. Thanks for the work that you're doing, for the support that you give to our community and other communities throughout the country. I think establishing these sort of structural and systemic solutions for Muslim communities is just key. We have to stop seeing ourselves as these little islands, scattered around the country, and start seeing ourselves as a larger community, and having support for that is just great. And hopefully we will begin to become more, we will continue to grow more sophisticated in how we run our organizations through the help of organizations like yours.
Yeah, definitely happy to do it, and it is an honor to be working on this project every day, and so grateful to have an opportunity to learn about communities all across the country like MCK. So, really great chatting with you.
Thanks, you too.
All right, take care.
Assalamualaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.